So this is the history of disability from 1850 to 1899. I'm Elizabeth.
I'm Enrique.
So in the early 1800s, individuals with physical and cognitive disabilities were oftentimes sent to asylums or poorhouses, usually because their families couldn't give them the proper care, and sometimes this was actually usually involuntary. Um, so they were oftentimes overcrowded, dirty, and unregulated, and individuals with disabilities were given drugs such as chloroform, bromides, and ether to control the patients. And so basically, during this time, care for individuals with disabilities was almost non existent. And the picture on the slide here is the Outagamie County Asylum for the Chronic Insane.
At that time, individuals with disabilities were considered less than human and a burden for society. So, usually, children born with visible disabilities were sold to freak shows or circus. Many adults with some disabilities that get to adulthood, they voluntarily join the circus and freak shows where they were gladly accepted, and their disabilities were used and often exaggerated and exploited for the amusement of the other people. In this picture, we have a tall lady with a group of microcephaly women around her from one freak show at that time. Also, in April 8th of 1864, the formerly known as Columbia Institution for the Deaf, Dumb, and Blind was transformed in the Gallaudet University. The Gallaudet University conferred the first bachelor's degrees to students with deaf and blind disabilities in the United States. A fun fact that is as of today, Gallaudet University is a bilingual private college with two official languages, are English and ASL. Also, in 1869, in Boston was founded the School for the Deaf and Mute, was later renamed as the Horace Mann School, which existed until today. It was the first public day school for the deaf and hard of hearing in the U.S. One of its main contributors was Alexander Graham Bell, which is in the picture there. He was a teacher there and also a big contributor to that school.
Edward Seguin created the training schools, which were really successful in assisting individuals with disabilities in returning back to their homes with the necessary skills they needed. The number of training schools and the enrollment rose quickly because of how successful they were. And then after the Civil War ended in 1865, um, America was in some economic troubles, and the lack of funds resulted in the decline of moral treatment use and the lack of employment for training schools. So, with the increased enrollment and the decreased staff, the schools quickly became overcrowded. And then by 1875, several states started constructing custodial institutions, which were basically just facilities that provided the most basic bottom line care for the lowest cost. And then once again, society began to view individuals with disabilities as economic burdens. And then the photo below is just a training school in Pennsylvania. And then in 1887, Alexander Graham Bell, he founded the Volta Lab, which was just an information center for deaf individuals. So he was actually a huge advocate for the deaf population. He taught deaf children and he also trained teachers to do the same. He worked with an organization which is known today as the Alexander Graham Bell Association for the Deaf. And a fun fact about him, his wife was deaf and his mother was also hard, hard of hearing. And then in 1899, Elizabeth Farrell was the first person to teach a special education classroom in America. She created the idea of special classrooms instead of separate special schools for individuals with disabilities. She stressed the idea that these students should not be defined by their disabilities. And the picture to the left is Elizabeth teaching a special education classroom.
For our work, these were the reference we used, and this is it.